Okay, fantastic. So we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live for those watching actually live and those watching on the replay. So I have my guest today, Deanna. Deanna, I always say this, I do not introduce my guests myself because I would probably miss the highlights. So would you mind just introducing yourself, maybe some context and some background of who you are, what you do, and then we'll dive into our conversation.
Of course, and thank you, Colin, for having me today. It's great to be here and to have this chat with you. I'm Diana, as you said, and as people can see from my tag here under my name, I'm a mindset coach for career changes. I work with high achievers generally and help them deal with and get rid of perfectionism so that they obtain meaningful career changes. And those, just to give you an example or two of those, could be a career change in the sense of a career pivot, which is a change in role, but doing something that has something in common with what people are doing now. Or it could be a career transition, which is moving to a very different role from what people are currently having, or the move to a leadership position and preparing for it. And after getting the leadership position, adjusting to the leadership position, or the move or the change from being an employee to becoming a solopreneur. Those are the types of big changes that I help my clients with. And most of our work revolves around working with their thinking and their attitudes to change some things that don't work for them anymore and to make their thinking more constructive, more flexible, adapted to the change, the practical change that they want to make in their career. And also, we touch on the practical aspects of what it means to make a career change in this market in this in 2025, let's say. Yeah.
Nice. Fantastic. There's your introduction, my brain's going off in so many different directions of which thread to pull on first, because I think, we, like all the conversations I have on live, I had this introduction meeting and we spoke before and we talked about many things. And this idea about perfectionism, it was
Mm.
something that stood out from that conversation. And that's, really what I kind of wanted to talk about today. But I, why it's interesting for me is that uh, years ago, I went through therapy, and I think I explained this to you before.
Yeah.
And during that, the therapist said, "Oh, well, you're a bit of a perfectionist," and I couldn't relate to it, and it didn't really land with me because I have an older brother. He's been my idol for my whole life, and he has this thing of, especially when it comes to physical things, if it's like fixing a bike or something, if it's not quite
Mhm.
right, he would make sure that he would do it over 1,000 times just to make sure that it's correct. So I had this association with people like my brother being a perfectionist, or artists being a perfectionist, and in creativity, etc.
Mhm.
So it never really landed with me, and it took me a while to understand that, oh, I do have perfectionism, but it shows up in such a different way than maybe that we think it does, and or we just associate it with the creative types, etc. And
Mhm.
then when I started to realize, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I've felt for a long time this perfectionism side holding me back, because it wasn't that when I was doing something, I needed it to be perfect. I almost needed the environment to be perfect before I did anything. So
Mhm.
um, let's say starting a business. Okay, it's the perfect time. Now I've got the money behind me. I've got
Yeah.
this, and this. And I was like, oh, and it wasn't until then that I realized, and it still exists today, but I know we'll probably get onto awareness, but I think there's so many people holding themselves back because of perfectionism,
Mhm.
and they may know it, but they may not. And I
Mhm.
kind of want to explore that with you. Like, so with your clients, they already know that it's perfectionism is running them, or is it an awareness? Where do you start when you first engage with people?
It could be that they already know and that they want to address it.
Mhm.
So they come to work with me from this angle of perfectionism. Or it could be that they come to work with me from this angle or the problematic or the challenge of high achiever. There are aspects there that can intertwine with perfectionism, or they might be in a place in their lives, in their career paths, that they want to make a change. And as you said, they might find that things are holding them back. They might have some options, but they might not really know what exactly to go for. And they find it hard to decide by themselves, and so on and so forth. Or they might not exactly know. So they come with a confusion of, what do I want to do, really? I know I don't want to do this anymore. And then that's another starting point where we can start and explore. And most of the time, I discovered that there is this mindset aspect, or this mindset element, that has something to do with how they approach the change, if they do it, if they don't, if they take action, whatever's holding them back. There are some, flavors, as you
Yeah.
described, this type of flavor or that type of flavor of perfectionism. Of course, we're not just that. We're not, as people, just perfectionists. We're many other things, and there are many parts to us. But it seems like, for people that I work with, at least, and even people that I've met that I haven't worked with, and myself included, and now talking to you, it's like we can relate on this topic of the one or two flavors of perfectionism. It can be that these thoughts that come with perfectionism, the attitudes, the beliefs, yeah, or negative assumptions, convictions, however you want to call them, they impact our ability to do things or not do things that we might want.
Yeah.
So those are multiple angles that people kind of come into the coaching process and work with me, and not just the one.
Yeah.
It could be a mindset angle, or it could be a career angle, but most often than not, there is the mindset element involved in this. And particularly when we talk about more meaningful or bigger career changes, not just changing from job A to job B, the same type of role, maybe just in a different company.
Yeah.
That's more predictable, let's say. But if we want to make bigger changes, then, all these things bubble up to the surface: our ideas about ourselves, our expectations, our assumptions, all these things, and about the world, as you said, right? The environment needs to be perfect so that I can start doing something, or
Yeah.
this thing that I'm doing needs to be perfect so that I put it out into the world, let's say. So, yeah, that's kind of where people come into working with me.
Yeah. And is it so for me, again, I think therapy was one of the best things that I ever did, and I'm happy to talk about therapy. A lot of people don't; they feel it.
Hmm.
There's a lot of shame around it. It's almost it's this negative connotation that, and I don't know if that's because of my age or the people that I know, especially if I think about my parents' generation.
Yeah.
Therapy was, an extreme form where, you couldn't handle the world and you needed to be almost locked away from society. It's like this
Yeah,
quite
that
extreme.
stigma.
Yeah, and but the therapy that I went through was really actually such an amazing thing, and it was a way to discover about myself. So I'm not saying it doesn't exist for women, because it does, but I think generally for men, maybe younger men as well, we don't like to sort of say about therapy because it seems like a weakness. But
Yeah.
during one of the first sessions of my therapy, my therapist said to me, "Oh no, it's really brave and courageous what you're doing, because a lot of people don't face who they are and their thinking and their beliefs, because it can be quite scary."
Hmm.
And ever since then, I was like, "Oh, okay," and it changed my mind, because I thought I was going to her from a place of weakness, but then I actually felt it
Yeah.
was a place of strength, and ever since then, I was like, "Oh, okay," and that so at this I understand the word therapy, but I think it can bring up these negative connotations. I think if we changed that, I think maybe more people would go. But the whole concept of therapy for me was really about exploring myself and
Hmm.
exploring my past, my background, how I saw myself, how I thought, what sort of thoughts were going through my head, what triggers, etc. And it's
Yeah.
so interesting, because a lot of these things just happen unconsciously or by default, and you're like, oh, okay. And it was this awareness, this just this pause and going, oh, okay, what's happening?
Hmm.
Why? And when you start to question that, you can start to see, oh, okay, this belief is actually something I've inherited from my parents. It's not actually my belief; it's something that comes with me. And
Yeah.
then when you're aware of that, you can adjust it. If it serves you, fine. And when I say serves you, I think sometimes it doesn't serve us, but it gives us some comfort. It just, oh yeah,
Hmm.
my parents will like me if I believe the same things that they believe. And
Yeah.
because of that, I started to think about how the mind is, all of these triggers, and it's such a beautiful playground when you start to go, oh, okay, what's happening here? And
Hmm.
if you approach it in a curious way and not beat yourself up, it can be
Yeah.
such a fun thing. And then when you understand yourself, you start to look at other people and you go, oh, okay, maybe this is the thing that's going on for them. And it's not, it's easy to project yourself onto other people, but when you see that, in your own journey, and then you can recognize it in other people, it can allow you to help. And I think that's almost how you got into this work yourself, right?
Yeah. So I had a kind of a similar experience to what you're describing. And for sure, I do believe, because that's the work that I do now, that the mind is fascinating with its um, mechanisms, let's say, various mechanisms, some that can be helpful, some that can be detrimental. To me, or the way I got into therapy, I did coaching first as part of my one of my previous roles. So I was exposed to that at first. And then I started therapy at the beginning of the pandemic, so about 5 years ago. And I went because I wanted to have something different than what things were like for me at that point in my life. Um, because you were saying about the serving, some things that might be serving or not serving us. Okay, I got to that point where I was with the things that I was thinking and doing and so on, but I wasn't feeling fulfilled. I wasn't feeling good about myself. So I wanted to make a change in the way that I saw myself, in the way that I saw the world, and the way that I could start doing things, even if the timing or all the elements are not perfectly aligned or perfect. So that was the start of, or yeah, the start of the journey into my own mindset, into my own exploration about my own beliefs and negative assumptions and convictions, and changing them into something more helpful, more constructive, sometimes more flexible. Because if we talk about, and now I'm going to go back to the idea of perfectionism, and I realized we didn't kind of give the context of what it is, right? So I'll do that here. Perfectionism is this mental phenomenon, right? So thoughts happening in our heads, basically, which is tied to this pursuit of high standards from ourselves, about the world, um, with like some rigidity around how things should be, how things are done. All those types of attitudes are
Mm,
connected with perfectionism. Or it could show up like excessive concern for making or not making mistakes, self doubt. It could be that it happens not just like at the beginning of us doing something, when it's normal to have some self doubt when you do something for the first time, but it shows up over and over again in time. Or the inability of feeling satisfied with the things that we achieve, yeah, which can lead to stress, which can lead to anxious states as well. Overthinking is usually also associated with perfectionism. So this like rigid type of mindset usually is what perfectionism means. And that's kind of been my experience when I was starting this journey. I was thinking about myself, and you gave this example of, if the environment isn't perfect, all the things aren't aligned perfectly, I'm not going to start something. I had that to an extent. More so, my the way perfectionism showed up for me was in repeating and rechecking and verifying things to make sure that they are as best they can be, that I didn't make mistakes. So, fear of making mistakes, fear of failure, that was a big thing for me when I started this journey. And it wasn't that I wasn't doing stuff, I wasn't procrastinating on things,
Mm,
but I was focused, very much focused on what I deliver needs to be at very high standards.
mm,
And of course, I was my worst self critic. If people were giving me feedback initially before starting this journey into like going deep into my way of thinking, I would take the negative and expand it in my mind and make it bigger than the positive. So it was all me, basically, all me doing all of these things to myself and criticizing or judging myself, judging situations, judging other people based on my own, you said we project things onto others, based on my own way of being, doing, thinking, expecting others to act or do or be the same, which is, I know now, it's mental, right? We're so different. And yeah, we definitely need more self compassion and compassion in this life and in interacting with people. So that was the beginning of the journey for me. And that was the way that perfectionism was showing up at the time. And through this work of coaching and psychotherapy, both, I'm also doing now both at the same time, I've managed to rewire, to change these ideas, these beliefs around making mistakes. It's not the end of the world. It's okay. It's okay to fail and learn from it and do better next time. So, my way of thinking now is different in that sense, that I can start to do things, that I do things, that I don't stress and over stress about things being perfect from the first time. What? Imagine I wanted to do stuff perfectly from the first go. Not anymore. So now it's a process of learning and doing things better the next time, adjusting, and also looking at the work that I do with, you said curiosity earlier, with curiosity in the sense that if a mistake happens, if a failure happens, then I question what's going on with it. Why, but not the judgy type of why,
mm,
more so the investigative type of why. Why did it happen? What needs to be different? What do I need to learn or discover so that the next iteration of this thing is better than what the initial or the second one was? And also gauge if I want to keep on doing that thing. I want to keep on doing it and I want to make it better. How do I make it better? Okay, cool. Then I go off and learn and experiment and do it again and iterate and so on so that I make it better. Or I can draw the conclusion that actually this thing that didn't work out is not something that I really want to do, but I'm glad that I did it the first time or the second time. And now I know. So that's been a massive shift for me from I wanted to have everything perfect and aligned and from the first go. That's why all the checking and rechecking and the double triple verifications and so on versus just start just start to do something and see how it goes. And I think this way of thinking now in my life aligns more, even if we think about agile and how this methodology works in companies and not just like in tech companies but in general. It's like work on something for a bout of time, put it out into the world or give it to the customer, test it out, see the feedback that you get, and improve on it, iterate, go further in the next bout of time, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's where I am now, and that's where I started from, just to paint a picture.
yeah, that's brilliant. There's so much that I want to sort of pull on in terms of. So I think the first thing I want to sort of say is about this perfectionism, because I think often there's this misconception that. So I think there's this almost very fine line, and it can be about perfectionism, as in you're going to do something really well, and it's just this almost like this 1% difference between putting something out there that's really good, and then once you cross that line, it becomes, like you
Mm-hmm.
say, this almost behavior of checking, triple checking, etc. So it's not getting rid of perfectionism. And I think this is where people struggle, because they do really good work. They're amazing at what they do,
Yeah.
and then it's this misconception that perfectionism. Okay, well, if I get rid of perfectionism, my standards are going to drop. But it's almost like this level between it. And no, no, no. It's
Yeah.
you will be amazing. You will deliver quality because that's
Yes.
in you. What you're trying to not remove but try and understand is where that goes beyond that line, and
Yeah.
it's you're into this behavior that's stopping you or it's not serving you. And it's so, and I think it can be very misconceived. I experienced that in my own life. I want to just take an example of doing a presentation at work. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say, so again, I would do it so it looks right, and then you can, spend, you can work till midnight to do that presentation, and
Yeah.
you go, okay, but what's serving me? Is it because it's wrong, or is it because I want to be perceived as perfect? And it's just being able to create this pause and sort of say, okay, what's actually running the show here? Is it the
Mm-hmm.
perfectionist, from a quality standpoint, or is it the perfectionist from my mind beating myself up or something? And
Yeah.
I think that's, I think it's important to mention, because people worry about taking that perfectionist part away, but it's not. I think that quality, how you show up and what's important to you, will always remain. It's just
Yeah.
this, when you cross that line, it's what's happening, and if you can
And
do that.
I totally agree with you. And this reminds me of one of my coaching clients that had this exact thing that you said. Oh, if I don't have this way of thinking anymore, will I just be a slob, basically?
Yeah,
And I was
yeah.
like, no, no, no. I don't think that's possible. By the way that the person works, and by their work ethic, and by the quality of work that they want to put out there into the world, I would say with confidence that they're not going to become a slob. And there is a difference, I would add here, between perfectionism and perfecting things,
Mm,
right? So perfectionism is all that we talked about, the going to the extreme in our way of doing and thinking, or not doing, rather, if we talk about procrastination. Perfecting is I put this thing out into this presentation. I do it as best I can right now. And if I find something tomorrow, or if I get any feedback from the people that I present to, then I can improve on it. Then I can
mm,
perfect it over time. I can make it better with experience. I can make it better with iterations, by getting feedback, by actually having the experience and seeing how I feel about it. And
yeah,
maybe then I get ideas of, oh, I could have said this other thing that I didn't include initially. Or maybe this is too much of something that I need to take out. It's not always adding more. Sometimes it can be simplifying things as well. So, yeah, I think that's an important distinction to make.
yeah. It's it's strange, because when you were saying about putting this thing out into the world, I something occurred to me, is that we often tie our identity up with the work that we do.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that can, we are not everything that we do, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think, and it kind of loops back into your, you mentioning about feedback, because when you mentioned it, I was like, oh yeah, that's me. Because I used to have appraisal, so I worked in corporate space for many years, and I would have an appraisal every 6 months, mainly a year. And even if they said the good things, my focus when I walked out was the bad things, and I would use that to beat myself up or feel injustice about the world, or whatever it was. And um, I think, just taking some distance and realizing that you're not everything that's out there, and being okay. If I say be vulnerable, and I don't know if that's a scary way to think about it, but you never know until you get some feedback. So, but when you're
Yeah.
highly sensitive in that way, it can be very. You can feel, oh, I'm going to put this out there, and I'm going to get criticized or something, and this can be a very big triggering thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And but then I think what in your previous sort of conversation, is the way that you start to talk to yourself is so much nicer, and the words I could see that you were using, like, because you were talking about how it was, but now you were saying, I'm just going to explore, I'm going to discover. Very,
Yeah.
very curious words. Very. Oh yeah, okay. This is okay. I've put this out there, and why is that not quite right? And
Hmm.
it's again, it comes back to this voice in our heads that how we talk to ourselves. And I'm thinking when I give something and someone gives feedback, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was crap, or oh Jesus. But
Yeah.
actually, if you disassociate and just go, oh, okay, I'm going to give this out.
Yeah.
I'm going to just see. And there's this thing that I've tried to start to do recently. So, well, one is be a bit kinder to myself, and it starts with that voice in my head, and it it is the simplest thing to do when you're aware of it. But I will give an example. I'll go, "Oh, that's stupid." That's how I would say
Hmm.
before. Now it's just slightly better. It go, "Oh, that was silly." It really kind of takes the sting
Yeah.
out of the word, and it's like, "Oh, okay." And the
It's less
second thing I
intense.
yeah, exactly, and you go, "Oh, yeah," and
Hmm.
you're being kinder to yourself, and
Hmm.
because you're being kinder to yourself, you don't stay in your head, you kinda go, "Oh, yeah, it was silly," and you can move past things a lot
Yeah. Yeah.
easier. And, the second thing is this, experimenting, and I love this word experimenting because certainly in business, I think it starts in school, so I don't or being a child, we have this pass fail thing. It's
Hmm.
like, you pass your exams, you pass this, oh yeah, you've got this, and I think it builds this culture or idea that everything has to be one or the other. And in business, I believe it's exactly the same. It's like, you've done that, it was wrong, or you've done that, it failed, or when you lose money, it's seen as a failure. But actually,
Yeah.
losing money can be a win. But the way that we see it is actually the wrong way round. And I heard this. I follow this guy called Joe Hudson. I don't know if he's on your radar at all. He's a guy in
No, but
the
I bet he will be.
yeah, I found it really, really interesting because the way that he talks and he says about experimenting and being curious, but he doesn't say curious. He says just be in wonder because he said with curiosity, there's an agenda attached to it. If you're in wonder, then there's no outcome, and it's almost
Hmm.
being even more kinder to yourself. But he talks about experimenting with your life, experimenting with outcomes. And I love this because experimenting really takes a lot of the sting out of it. Again, that perfectionist thing, this has to be
Yeah.
correct or this has to be this certain way. And if you experiment, you go, I'm going to set a time limit. I can say a week, a month, or 6 months, or whatever. I'm
Hmm.
going to see what works. I'm going to see what I learn from it.
Yeah.
And there's no fail or pass in experimenting. It's just learning. And
Hmm.
I've really enjoyed it. It was such a nice reframe. Again, it doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes I get caught into the old way, and I think maybe this is an important thing. I don't I don't believe that, if we've been wired a certain way I'm 47 now. Let's say I've been wired since I was 2 or 3 years old. So in 44 years, you don't just click like that. It,
Yeah.
it takes a time to unwire all the neurons and everything in your mind.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes it comes back and it's just about okay, it's not one and done. And I think we live in a world where we want quick fixes, we want everything to be fixed, etc.
Yeah.
But actually, again, going back to therapy, like, I really enjoyed it, and I really like that discovery side of things. And it can, if you approach things from this curiosity place or this place of wonder, it it really is a nice place, and you go, and then when maybe you're going back on the perfectionist track, it's easy to look and go, oh, okay, and then you can say, oh, was there some triggers? And yeah, I've said a lot of words, but does that sort of resonate?
Yeah, for sure. I do resonate with this experimenting and the wonder part. I also I think I'd rather, or the way that I do things and the way that I approach things is less from a wonder perspective and more from a curiosity perspective. And why I'm saying that is because I want a result with my exploration of a
Mm,
topic, of an action, of a project. I want to get something by or through doing that thing. Of course, in reality, sometimes I do, sometimes, or most times in this business space, I don't. And I need to swallow that hard pill and learn to deal with that, which is a big growth opportunity right there. Um, but for sure, learning for me, it also has been a journey to learn to, for some of the things that I do, to detach them from the result and just go with the flow of doing things. And if I get an idea, create something from that idea. I'm quite good at taking action, and I'm quite good at thinking about the future, which both good and also from an anxious perspective. I tend to think about the future quite a bit, and I think that's why, as an instrument, coaching has worked well for me when I am the client, or when I've been, because I have been and also am right now a client in coaching, but also as a practitioner of coaching.
mm,
It comes more natural to me to think about things that I want to obtain, things that I'm looking forward to, things on my to do list, and so on and so forth, and where I'm starting from. And I dwell less, I do dwell on the past when I go to psychotherapy, but I dwell less on the past in general in my day to day and in my way of thinking. And if we were to make a distinction between these two tools, these two instruments, as you also described from your experience with psychotherapy, it leans, or it can lean into exploring the past, exploring your childhood, where things come from, explaining yourself to yourself
mm,
why and where they come from, and why do they look the way they look right now. And coaching is more about, what do I want to have, obtain, get in the future, and where do I start from? I start from today, the present, where I am now, and build towards that desired outcome, whatever it may be. And still in coaching, there is this aspect of exploration and awareness and knowing oneself without necessarily going into the whys of
mm,
exploring the childhood and so on. And for some people, it can work that they go to coaching and don't go to therapy. For some people, it works to go to therapy and get whatever it is that they want to resolve like that. For some people, both are great. So they both go to therapy and to coaching. I am one of those people. I have clients and have had clients who did both in parallel, or first did therapy, then went to coaching. I've worked with people who only did coaching and it worked well for them. So there's diversity there. And I remember from our first conversation, and I'm going to bring this up here, that we were talking about tools and things that work for us and
mm.
what we do and so on, that we settled on it's not a one size fits all.
Yeah.
Same with these approaches and these instruments. But yeah, exploration, testing things out, and also making that distinction and or that separation between the thing that I do and myself. That's also been very helpful. I don't equate that to who I am anymore. Used to in the past. I don't necessarily do that now. And from a mindset and like neuroscience brain perspective, there is this difference. There's a part of our brains called the anterior cingulate cortex, and this part of our brain we can break it down, let's say, in smaller parts. And one part of the ACC is responsible for this emotional response to a mistake, or to a failure, to something that doesn't go as we like it to go. Another part of this region of the brain is responsible for this curiosity or detective like response of why it happened, what can I do about it, how can I make it better. And if we exercise that part more, then we can dim the intensity of this emotional frustration, sadness, whatever emotion, unpleasant emotion may arise with a mistake or with a failure. So that's like from a mechanistic point of view, we can definitely swing from one side to the other. And make this portion of the ACC that deals with the why and the how and the what more, and so that the brain has, or the neurons, let's say, have more synapses and more connections in that region of the brain than in the other. But that's also, to your point, something that comes with practice. You don't do it once and then you're done, especially when we grow up with these beliefs and with these things that we get from our parents, get from school, get from people around us that may not be ours originally, or we might discover that actually our way of thinking is different when we explore, when we start to dig into it, when we start to want to change things. And that can be freeing to know that, oh, yeah, this thing that I believed until today, actually, it's from this person, or it's from this situation in my past, or it's something that I learned through experience. But as we know about the human brain, it's plastic throughout the entirety of our lifetimes. So we can affect change. We can change it and induce this neuroplasticity, which is the change of the brain in response to experience. So, experience meaning what we think, and we can think differently. Experience meaning how we behave. We can rewire things through the way that we behave if we do it differently, through our habits, through the way we feel, and the thoughts that we associate with those feelings, through the way we look at stress. It has a multitude of options that we can choose from and start practicing. So yeah, I think also, from experience and from the people that I'm working with, even though coaching is an instrument that it is limited in time, like you can go to therapy for years and years, generally go to coaching for 3 months, 6 months, a year, not as long as therapy, because we're trying to get to something, we want to obtain something, we work towards a goal in coaching. And still, it doesn't happen in one go. It doesn't happen in one, all that we need to resolve, or all that we need or want to obtain, doesn't necessarily happen in one session, right?
Yeah.
So it's still a process, just like therapy is a process. And I do also see this, the fact that people want speed and want things to happen fast and want things to happen easy. And I do believe that they happen faster and easier if we get help from
Yeah.
mentors, from trainers, from coaches, from therapists, from whatever tool works for us. But it doesn't mean that it happens instantly. And it's okay to not happen instantly. I
Mm.
think that there's growth there. There's like, we become wiser by going through the messiness of it.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that idea because I I some the way that I've just thought about that. If we affect very quick change, it often doesn't stay. It's just a
Yeah.
quick thing and it's done. Whereas, if you work on it and it becomes a habit or it's a way that you become, it's basically deep rooted and you can
Mm-hmm.
connect it and you can rely on it. And yeah, that takes time, but there's if you want to look at it and sort of say, well, you can have a quick change and then you have to come back and keep fixing it, or you can just take the slow change, build it up, understand why. And there's wisdom in that, right? There's understanding
Yeah.
yourself, understanding, what sort of, again, I keep saying this trigger, what environment triggers you, what things trigger you, etc. And it can be fun. And I think a lot of people think it can be painful, but I genuinely have had a lot of fun exploring myself. I think, again, there's also a fine line where you can sit in this space of trying to blame other people or circumstances for your situation. And that can also
Mm-hmm.
be quite comforting to sort of say, oh, okay, yeah, I blame my parents for this, and that's why I am the way I am. But for me, the goal is not to dwell in that space, but just have this
Yeah.
awareness, go and sort of go, oh, okay. Because I think, in my experience, most stuff has come from childhood, things that we either knew, we experienced. And again, when I talk about things in childhood, we we often think of extremes like abuse or something like that, but it can
Mhm.
just be a simple thing that's like a caregiver, be your parent or teacher or something, said to you once, and you've internalized it in a different
Mhm.
way than it was meant. And so we carry that as a belief or a feeling or a thought, and sometimes we don't even realize it's there. But then if you go back and have a look, you can question it and you go, "Oh, but with my adult brain, that's,
Exactly.
maybe that person was stressed at the time." And I this comes up a lot when I'm now a parent and I have 2 young children, and you go, "Oh, maybe my mum was just stressed when she said that to me."
Yeah.
And then it's like this, it's a way to kind of dissolve a belief or an inner thought, and you go, "Oh, okay," and just, again, be curious, okay, how that is, and you go, "Oh, okay, that makes sense to me now." And it's, yeah, I think it can be very interesting. Again, dangerous to sit in that, but, blaming other people or situation, circumstances. That, again, I've been through that. I was looking for justifications why I was a certain way, but
Mhm.
like you just said about the brain being plastic, everything can change, right? And you just, don't look on that. And I'm one of these people that I find difficult with labels, especially with, I'm going to say things like autism, etc., because we throw out a lot of labels, and I think it's really good for, um, to understand what's going on. But oftentimes, in my own life, those labels have been something that have held me back, or I was like, well, I can't do that because of this
Mm,
label.
mhm.
And that sort of limits us. And again, there's a comfort in that, like a weird sort of, oh, comfy place. Okay, I'm this, so I don't
Yeah.
have to try or something. And again, it's, all of these things, like you said, there's tools, there's many tools, there's many different ways to do things, and it's not a one size fits all. And I think we're all unique, and the way that I've done things wouldn't maybe work for you or for someone else, but yes, it might work for someone. So I think having these things and being more aware of, this is a tool, this is a tool, this is, and you can just try stuff. And again,
Mhm,
tools
mhm.
tools don't always work. I give the example of journaling. I like journaling, but I've had this weird relationship with it where I did it in the evening, before I went to bed, but I didn't really know what I was doing. Then I dropped it. Then I picked it up again. Then I've done like this, 3-minute journaling where you do it in the morning and in the evening. And it's just about trying these things and seeing what serves you. And,
Yeah.
um, it I still don't know. I think there's an element of writing something down that helps me, but long
Mhm.
form journaling is maybe a go-to every 6 months when everything is a bit crazy in my head.
Yeah.
But
I
on a
resonate
day
with that.
Yeah, but, on a day-to-day basis, it just becomes one of those things that maybe that perfectionist mind goes, "Oh, I've got to journal, I've got to do this and this and this," and
Mhm.
so
Putting pressure.
yeah, and again, just really to your point, having someone else there helping you see what's going on, because you're in your own head, you're doing these things and you think that they're serving you, but having an observer outside of that who you're paying to look at you and to sort of say, okay, or just question you, could be so helpful to moving you
Mhm.
on. And I think people avoid, going to coaches or therapy or whatever, but it it's such a great investment, I found,
Yeah.
because having someone just sort of saying, "Oh, okay," and when oftentimes everything exists up here, and when you speak it out loud and you say it to someone,
Mhm.
and then you go, "That is crazy," but that thought has been sitting in your mind for ages, and it
Yeah.
makes sense, and you're going, "Yeah, yeah, absolutely." But then, like,
Mhm.
if we were to have a coaching session, and you go, "Oh, Colin, why are you journaling?" I go, and then I come up with the excuse, and you'll go, and it's such a
Yeah.
enlightening moment of moving from your brain to physically speaking it. And then I
Mhm.
don't know if, for me, once I've said it, I'm like, that's weird. And then it's like this enlightening moment of going, yeah, I shouldn't be doing that. So yeah, it's
I really resonate when it comes to me being a client in coaching or in therapy, but mostly in coaching, I found this that happens similarly to what you're saying. Is first of all, I know that something that really works for me, and there might be other people out there who might resonate with what I'm saying and what you're saying as well, is it's very helpful to me to talk about, like, take the thoughts that I have in my head and speak them, to talk to someone else. Yeah, I talk to friends, I talk to family, I talk to my boyfriend, and so on and so forth. But talk to a specialist, right? So when I do that, and when they ask me questions that I don't normally think about, so they come from different angles, different perspectives, they might challenge me, which I really want and need to have the challenge of these types of thoughts when we talk about beliefs that don't help us. And sometimes, even as you said, when I blurt this idea and I'm like, what, that's ridiculous, come on. But in my head it's the truth and nothing but the truth. But then when I talk about it, and when I start to take it apart and look at the evidence, what's the evidence for this, what's the evidence against this, and how can I dispute this, what are the consequences of me believing this thing,
Mm.
what's the objective thing that's happening, right? Because normally in my head, they're all mingled together. It's this
Yeah.
situation with all of my emotions and beliefs and, thinking over it. And when I
Mm.
talk about it and I get asked these types of questions, I can pull these parts apart and leave that conversation more energized, more optimistic, more empowered, that I have things that I can do about that thing. It's not
Yeah.
the end of the world like I imagine it in my head, right? It's lighter than
Yes.
what it is in my head. And but yeah, talking about these things, rather, for me, talking helps more than writing about them. I do write, but some at like odd times. I don't have a habit of doing journaling. Talking about it helps me more. And also, with this exploration that I'm describing and with the challenges and so on, I also get to see my blind spots that I don't normally see when I am with myself writing, even writing, or just in my head thinking my own thoughts. So it definitely helps to have that person to connect with, that I have trust built, of course, between the two of us. And I see the same thing happening with clients that I work with.
Yeah.
Um, that and the insights and the changes and the yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. When you were saying about taking your thoughts apart, and I was thinking about like being a detective of your own mind, and then do you know
Mm.
the series CSI? It was,
Yeah,
I don't know, yeah, and I
I
always
used
used
to
to,
watch it a lot.
yeah, but it's then I was thinking, okay, you're basically investigating actually what's going on. And then as you were talking, I was like, oh, maybe people watching this might think, oh, that takes a lot of energy, that's a lot of effort. And then I thought to myself, yes, it might do at first,
Yeah.
but then if you realize the energy it actually takes. So we we seem to associate energy with physical activity,
Hmm.
as in, okay, I'm going to go for a run, etc. But I feel, you can probably back this up or correct it, but the energy that our brain uses, especially when there's a thought and you're caught in that thought and it's not serving you, it really drags you down and your energy goes. So
Yeah.
if people were watching it and then going, okay, oh, I don't want to put the effort into breaking everything apart, that feels like a lot of energy. The reality is it's probably less energy than it takes for you to be caught in that thought and not deal with it and not look at it. And it, because that thought may go on for a lot longer, so it's not just
Exactly.
this compressed energy for this time. It goes on over
Yeah.
and it runs like this script in the back of your head. And so it's again investment in time into you, into your brain, just to sort of be curious. And again, it doesn't have to be heavy, but to your point, it's a lot easier when someone externally can help you navigate that. And the best coaches that I've ever worked with or therapists, they know you. I've often sort of blurted out a load of stuff which are excuses, and they get behind that excuse and they go,
Yeah.
what's that? What's that thing over here, Colin? And I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I
We're
feel
going
very
there.
exposed. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, and it's like, oh, okay. And that for me is just, oh, this person gets it. They understand, how patterns work or what we're trying to do, and and we often do this misdirection because it's easier, but when they see it and
Hmm.
then you go, oh, you're the smart person. That's why I'm paying you the big bucks
Yeah.
to get there. And again, I think it's just on that point of coaching and therapy. um, I would always advocate people, there are a lot of coaches out there, there's a lot of therapists, etc., and yeah, they've got qualifications, but make sure that you find the right person that you resonate with, not just to someone that goes, oh yeah, 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 like someone who's going to
Yeah.
move you forward, get you to where you want to get to. And that might be that you have to try a few times, and again, that can feel exhausting, when you have to maybe explain your life story or your background maybe once or twice or even three times, as long as it takes. But the time invested in finding the right person and connecting with that, and that relationship can be, like you said, coaching can be 3 months, 6 months, a year. Therapy can be over years, but and it doesn't. Once you've got to a sort of place, it can be just something that you connect with that person every
Yeah.
couple of months, etc. But that investment in the beginning really is
Hmm.
worth it, because I think it can be the difference between you going, okay, yeah, I'm aware, or okay, changing the trajectory of your thinking, your life, what you want, etc. And so that investment in speaking and just trying things. And I think you know, when you speak to a coach or a therapist, yeah, you won't always get it on the first time. I think you might need like one or two sessions. And
Hmm.
my best guide for myself was, find the person that isn't focused on doing it as a job. Find the person that, like, the money isn't the thing. They don't, I get the business. I get, we all need to make money as a business. I get that. But I've
Yeah.
been in situations where it felt like someone was just doing it because it was going to give them money, and their focus was
Mm.
giving me the bill at the end. And
Mm.
and
I'm
I was like,
sorry
oh,
you
okay.
experienced that.
Yeah, but in a good way. Again, I think most of these things have, all of these things help me learn, and I think that's fine. But you know, the people that get it, like that are good at that job, is, yeah, they should be paid the big bucks because you can transform
Mm.
someone's life. And
Yeah.
but it's not necessarily about the money for them. They realize that they're good and that they can charge for that. um, but that you're I think once, it's easy for me to say because I've had a lot of different coaches and therapists and stuff like that, and it's easy to look back. It was harder to see at the time, but yeah,
Hmm.
that feeling of, is someone doing this? Is it, about the money, or is it about the person? Is it about, they love what they do and they can see it? And I think,
Yeah.
again, for me, that's really the investment that you should do. And yeah, it might cost you more, but it's worth it because it's an investment in yourself. It's not an investment in that person, it's an investment in yourself.
For sure. I totally resonate with what you're saying. If I don't see how I wouldn't. And also, I think it's a good idea. I've worked with more than one therapist. I've worked with more than one coach so far, and I probably will in the future as well. I've worked with more than one mentors, or more than one mentor, and I see value in different stages of my life
Mm,
in going to someone who maybe is specialized in this topic, and then at some other point to someone else who's specialized in this other topic. Or maybe I can come back after a while, as you said, to this coach, mentor, therapist, and start talking about another thing that's happening in my life that I need to explore, unpack, change, whatever it is. Like, I've had breaks in these processes. I've come back to processes. I've worked with different people. And I think that's the beauty of the the internet and this the technology and the global world, connected global world that we live in, that we can access that. And there are
Mhm.
more and more expert specialists, therapists, coaches, mentors, and so on. And there are options. There's availability out there. So definitely, I think we're living in a time where we can't afford to not do things on our own.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that when my parents were young, for example. That offer was much smaller, tighter, less awareness about these instruments than we have today. Still, there's work to do to get this word out to the general public. And part of what we're doing today is that effort. But there are options. There are ways that people can get to where they want to get with help. They invest for a certain amount of time, effort, and money, and they're better off at the on the other side of it, right at the end of or during the process, at the end of the process. So yeah, I'm a strong believer in that, and I totally support your idea.
Yeah. So I'm going to just go back to this idea about perfectionism, because there's this thought in the back of my brain, because you mentioned about high achievers. Is there an association with high achievers and perfectionism?
Hmm.
Does it always show up, or is perfectionism exists in other people that aren't don't see themselves as a high achiever? Because I
Yeah.
want to explore that in the way that if someone was listening to this, they would say, I'm not a high achiever, therefore I cannot be a perfectionist. Is there a
Hmm.
correlation? What's your
There,
experience?
yeah, there can be. From experience, I'm talking from experience and from the literature that I've been exposed to, the books that I've read, the podcasts, scientific podcasts that I've listened to. I don't think it's a one-to-one correlation. Like
Mm,
everyone who is a high achiever necessarily is a perfectionist or has perfectionistic tendencies as well. Um, and it definitely depends on, and it matters on how the environment you grew in, the things you were exposed to, your, again, parents, caretakers, school, all of these things play into our belief system as young adults, and moving on through life, not necessarily being like a one-to-one thing. Now, it so happens that I work with people who are high achievers and also have perfectionistic tendencies. There
mm,
might be high achievers who have imposter syndrome, for example. And imposter syndrome might show up in various ways, not just as the perfectionist. It can show up as the perfectionist, it can show up as the superhuman, the person that wants to do everything in all the aspects of their lives at the best capacity that they can, and so on and so forth. Not necessarily focusing on this, I don't know, work, right? Or
mm.
profession or career. You can get to be a perfectionist in one area of your life and not in others. There's
Okay.
also that. And then there are other ways of like where imposter syndrome shows up. And imposter syndrome, just to give a bit of context, is this, again, a mental phenomenon, thoughts, attitudes, behaviors, whereby that person that is actually competent and has the evidence of competency don't see themselves as competent, and rather they think they are fake or fraud and they're going to be found out. But in reality, that's not the case. And also, they might think that luck and network and being a nice person are not important things necessarily. They chug those things as excuses of why they obtained certain things, why they got in certain places, why they had this opportunity. Without, or yeah, rather than recognizing that these things are also valid, the network, the being lucky about something, the being at the right place at the right time, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's just a parentheses bracket closed on imposter syndrome. And there might be high achievers that have some aspects of perfectionism and not others. We talked about some today. Um, there might be high achievers who are really result oriented, and
Mhm.
that's like what they see If it's not going to happen, if it's not going to be something that I attain or obtain, problem. Mentality, it breaks down the idea about themselves and so on, and that can be tied to perfectionism. Or we can have high achievers who rather think and have attitudes around growth mindset, the things that we described earlier: experimenting, testing things out, learning from whatever it is that we do, caring about results as well, not just caring about the process and not about results, but doing it from a healthier,
Mm.
more constructive perspective. And that's kind of the journey of the people that I work with, to help them get from this, the perfectionist view of things, to the growth mindset, to the constructive, flexible way of approaching life, approaching their careers, and feeling more content and having more energy at work and in their personal life. That's the bottom line of the higher purpose of the work that I do. But yeah, not necessarily whoever is a high achiever is also a perfectionist.
Yeah, I love what you just said because I it feels this perfectionist side. Again, wanting things to be good and of a high quality, and then making that into a perfectionism. For me, is that fine line. But if you if you are aware that this perfectionism exists and
Hmm.
trying to take it apart and understand, it must feel amazing once you know, it is kind of a, I would say, like a block in our lives. And you go, just
Yeah,
imagine what you can achieve, even with high achievers that are already, you know, have most of what they want. You go, okay, this thing is almost, it looks from the outside that it's helping you, but once you take it apart, you'll be kinder to yourself, the way that you think, kinder to others,
hmm,
less judgmental, as you mentioned before, and then life will be easier. It will be, you'll maybe get the result or even better, but
yeah,
in a much easier way. Does that's how I sort of
yeah.
see it because
Easier, feeling more content about what it
yeah.
is that we do and how we do it. And I talk about, and I talk about with people in person, I talk about with people online, I talk about in my content what meaningful work is, um, because I do meaningful work and I would love for the whole world to get a chance to do meaningful work.
Mm,
And I believe that meaningful work doesn't mean it's easy necessarily. It means you enjoy it and you find reward and satisfaction in the work itself. That's
mm,
it comes with challenges like everything in life, but it's worth it, right? The challenges or the benefits are outweigh the challenges that we get by doing meaningful work that impact other people, that impact the world, and so on and so forth. Everyone can have their own kind of definition of what that is for them. And yeah, I think that's an important thing to to
yeah.
have to have and move from this perfectionistic way of, or rigid way of seeing things, into more enjoying myself while doing this thing, also caring about what I get from it, the result, but not focusing solely on the result, also focusing on the process. And there's this thing that it just popped into my head from this course about learning how to learn, a recommendation made there to focus on the process, not the product, which is to focus on the learning, the experience of it, and there are going to be results attached to all the
Mm,
efforts that we and the actions that we take. So yeah, there's that. And another thing that I wanted to say, and perhaps that could be a conversation for another day, another podcast. I see we're at an hour already.
yeah.
Is when we talk about high achievers and perfectionism, because you were asking earlier if there's a one-to-one correlation there. There might be high achievers who have other sabotage or self-sabotage patterns showing up, like people pleasing,
Mm,
like hypervigilance, like being restless and not being able to sit still and, like enjoy a moment of silence, for example, and other types of self sabotage that comes into play. We also explore that into coaching, but the main driver of the work that I do is or comes from this perfectionist angle. Because there might be perfectionists who are also people pleasers and or also hyper vigilant or restless or wanting to have control over things. And
Mm.
there's a whole exploration to be done there to de-escalate these things and to
Yeah.
make them less intense, as you were saying earlier, with the types of thoughts that you initially had, and from that's stupid to that's silly. Yeah, and that's like the transformation journey.
Yeah, for me, I'm fascinated by all of these combinations of characteristics, and I think with most things, there's a part that serves us or is, is actually really useful. But I think again, there's a line or an area that comes with those things, like the people pleasing, etc. I, I I would say I've been a people pleaser since I was young, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to unwind that. Recent events in my life actually allowed me to realize that that's just not possible. You can't have everybody liking you, um, and I've lost a few friends recently,
Mm-hmm.
and um, and then I realized, oh, just by something that I did, and it had such an impact on me that it and sometimes the events have to be quite big in our lives to really go, oh, this needs to change. And um, the people pleasing really sort of satisfied me before. It was like this feeling of comfort, or that
Yeah.
person likes me, and it's very strange because uh, it's like this warm blanket, and you think, oh yeah, it's lovely, but I realize it doesn't serve me. It's good when you have it makes me easy to be on camera and easy to relate to. So there has
Mm-hmm.
some nice characteristics, but there's this line where you go, no, I need to enter a room and everyone needs to like me, and it's you go, no. So with all of these things and characteristics, I'm fascinated because they're all like a different combination of, okay, you're a high achiever and you're a people pleaser, and okay, this equals this. And again, it's not that everyone is the same, or this equals this, but when you understand that and when you see what's going on and you see how much is serving you or not serving you, you can really impact change in your life for the better, and not
Yeah.
just for yourself. So I uh, since I've been a dad, what I realized is that I want my kids to see me differently. And so something that happened very early on, and I didn't realize it until I had children, I thought, okay, now I'm a dad, I'm just going to tell my children what to do. And I'll give a simple
Mm-hmm.
example. I was like, okay, they were at the meal table and they were picking up like a chip from the plate, and I was like, no, 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 you use your fork and you take it, and I was like, but they wouldn't do it. And then
Yeah.
I realized actually when I was taking the plate of chips from the kitchen to the table, I picked one up with my hands,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh God, yeah, that's me. And ever since things like that happened, I was like, oh, okay, it's such a mirror to yourself. And sometimes it can be very difficult to change yourself. You go, oh, okay, but sometimes when you change for other people, especially people that you care about, like your kids, because you want them to reflect a not better. I don't necessarily like the word better. It makes it sound like that we're worse or whatever. But the things that you would like your kids to see about you, you need to change that so they can physically see that, and then they'll mirror that. And
Mm-hmm.
again, it's not about manipulation, but it's just actually if you work on yourself. And again, a lot of this stuff about I've been a people pleaser and I don't want my kids to be people pleasers. And you go, okay,
Yeah.
let's look and try and change for myself, but for my
Mm-hmm.
kids so they don't inherit that or mirror that behavior. So I've found that sometimes it's easier to make a change when you're doing it for someone else, but it's the change on yourself that
Mm-hmm.
is the important part, if that makes sense.
That's fascinating. I don't have kids, but I can imagine your experience and what you're saying, and it makes sense to me that you caring about your kids and wanting to be I don't know, a more constructive, healthier, better, whatever version of
Yeah,
yourself, so that then that has impact on their lives as well.
yeah,
Totally makes sense.
yeah,
And it's a it's a great awareness again to have and to start from. To maybe
yeah,
there are other parents watching that could take you as an example in
yeah,
this situation, and do something about whatever pattern that emerges for them that they want to change and that they want to not pass on to their kids.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I'm very conscious of time. Um, Tiana, honestly, I think we could talk for ages.
Yeah.
I love what you do, how you do it. I love this way that you're helping people, but you're also exploring for yourself, and you're working through these things, and I love that. And the way that you've described, and this is you can I can tell just the way that you do things and the way that you're keep on learning, etc. That you're going to have a big impact on people, and the way that you do it is such a kind way, even while you're on your own journey. And I love this, and I would love if anyone's thinking about going out to coaching, or suffers with perfectionism, just to have a conversation with you, because I think you could
Yeah.
really enlighten a lot of people, and I hope people got that from this conversation. But you know, again, everyone's unique, and it's important just to sort of dig
Mhm.
into that. And I love the way that you do it. I love the way that you show up. I love the way that you're interested in carrying on your journey and helping other people. And you are a perfect example of a great coach in my mind. And we were talking about it earlier. So, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for this time. Thank you for being who you are, and sharing your thoughts and ideas, and I think that's amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the very kind words. I'm feeling flattered, and I can tell from our conversation that we had today and from the conversation that we had initially, just the two of us, that it's reciprocal. So, right back at you.
Thank you.
And yeah, definitely will perhaps do this again in the future and
Yeah,
explore some more on various topics related to the mind, related to change. It was wonderful to have this hour with you today. It made definitely it made the start of my day and the rest of my day better for being here. And thank you again for having me.
no, fantastic. It was my pleasure. For people wanting to find you, is it best on LinkedIn? That's how we came into contact. But is there a website,
Yeah,
or yeah, LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is one of the platforms that I use on, well, Monday to Friday. Let's say I get the weekend off from LinkedIn.
Nice.
But yeah, if people want to connect with me on LinkedIn, they can find me by my name, Diana
Yeah,
Enake. And then if they add coach at the end of that, they'll find me. Probably I'll be the first one in the search results, or on my website, which is dianaenake.com. Easy, simple. My name, that's it. And
nice.
yeah, I'd be happy to have a conversation with anyone who's curious, with anyone who's willing to explore perfectionism, high achieving, career changes, anything like that.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, so I will repost this conversation, and I'll copy I'll mention you and your website, so you can send that on to other people, so it's easier for people to find you. So, but yeah, for today, thank you very much for your time. 100% you're coming back, because I think there's so much to explore with you, and yeah, it was really fun and really enjoyable for me. So yeah, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you showing up for me.
Thank you again. Same for me.
Okay. Okay. All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye, Colin.